Hello, you are listening to Deeply Curious. My name is Cody Jensen, and joining me in our New York City studio apartment is Sarah Jensen, my wife.
Hello.
In this episode, we are going to be diving in to the last book ever written by Kurt Vonnegut.
Yes.
It is called A Man Without a Country, and if you've been keeping up with us, the Kardashians, a few episodes ago, we talked about my existential crisis that
Which is ongoing.
yes,
just so everyone knows.
And I feel like I have maybe found not answers but language to put to my feelings, which is helping me, move forward. Also just been reading some books and some things, and doing some searching of the soul and, finding things.
Are you feeling better about yourself?
I think so.
Sounds confident, yeah.
I think I'm feeling better. I feel like, I guess maybe it's kind of like that I have not found how to get out of the pool, but I have figured out how to wade in the pool.
Okay.
So it's like I'm not sinking, but I haven't figured out how to specifically get out, or even if I'm supposed to get out per se. Maybe it's not about getting out, it's about learning how to swim.
Very philosophical of you.
Well, that's my new, that's part of my existential crisis, is that,
It's your new identity.
Maybe I'm supposed to be a philosopher. Then it's like,
okay,
every day or so, it's like, well, maybe I'm supposed to be this.
Yeah, the other day you tried to tell me that you think you're supposed to be a person who writes books.
Well, I didn't say I thought I was supposed to be a person who writes books. I just thought it would be easier if I was a writer.
That is so far from the truth, though. If you were an actual writer, you would understand that it's not easier if you're a writer.
Well, it's mostly just thinking about all of these opinions, thoughts, about observations, all these things, trying to figure out, okay, I have all of this. I have this righteous anger about these certain things. How do I best present this to the world through, whatever art mediums?
Mm-hmm.
And
you think writing a book is better than making a documentary? Which I think you don't actually believe that.
I think I believe that right now.
I don't think you
know.
do.
I'm not saying that I can write a better book than I can write a better or make a better documentary. I'm just,
I don't think it's a better format, and I don't think you think that either.
I disagree.
I just think you're confused.
Well, yes. But I still disagree in my confusion.
Well, just trust me.
But before we fully jump into the conversation, just want to say a huge thank you to our patrons, our Jensen AV Club members. That is over at jensenav.club. The link is also in the description or the show notes. So Patreon is a way for basically for us to continue to make the art, to make these podcasts, to make our videos without having to overly worry about selling and creating art that sells, and we can just create art that matters. And we do that through partnering with people just like you that want to contribute financially if you want to, and also people who want to contribute financially while receiving exclusive perks and deeper access to things that we are doing, and whether you can even schedule one-on-one coaching sessions with either one of us, and there are levels all the way in between there as well. So if you want to check out the Jensen AV Club and see what you can get, or just see what it's like to be a member of the Jensen AV Club, to become a patron, if you will, you can do that by going to jensenav.club. And I want to say that this podcast, this particular episode, is produced by Karen Carmen, Greg and Christy Jensen, and Christian B. Schmidt. Those are all members of the Jensen AV Club that are either an associate producer level or a producer level, and one of the perks of that is you get actual credit on the show, as you just
Shout
heard.
out.
That your name here. So
thank you guys.
Yes, definitely. So back to the convo.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I'm wading in the deep end,
Mm-hmm.
trying to figure out life, I guess. I've also, besides reading A Man Without a Country by Kurt Vonnegut, I've also been reading a book about the middle. And I feel like we're going to talk about that one probably later too, so I don't want to
Yeah, I don't think we should talk about it too much because...
Yeah, because I don't want to spoiler alert.
Yeah.
But I do feel like that book is also helping me figure out exactly where I am in this process. But to stick with the topic of this podcast, so I read A Man Without a Country. It's an essay book by Kurt Vonnegut. Kurt Vonnegut is a prolific author of, 15 different novels. He's mainly a nonfiction, or he's mainly a fiction sci-fi writer. And in A Man Without a Country, he actually throws some shade and doesn't like being called a sci-fi writer. But
you know what I find really, this is just a side note about how we organize our bookstores. Because he's a sci-fi writer, but he's in fiction, not sci-fi.
Maybe that's changed over the years. Maybe he was thrown into sci-fi, but now
I
the
think
stigma
it might
of
have
sci-fi
something
is,
more to do with the fact that he's a classic author, maybe? I don't really know. I just find it fascinating how they decide to genre books.
Yeah. So, anyways, moral of this story is I read A Man Without a Country, and I can't stop talking about it, and so I figured we might as well record it.
Yeah. Might as well.
So, like I said, A Man Without a Country is an essay book. It is a very short book. I think it's only 170 pages, very short read. It is a collection of essays by the author, Kurt Vonnegut. It is, some of the essays are things that he had already previously published as prefaces of his previous novels, or things that he, had already said and kind of was already out there in the ether, I guess. And then some of it is brand new material. It was all brand new to me because this is the very first thing I've ever read of Kurt Vonnegut. My lovely wife would like for me to point out that I had no idea, maybe even who Kurt Vonnegut was until maybe a month ago. And she said, I really think you'd love Kurt Vonnegut. And then I read Kurt Vonnegut, and then guess what? I really love Kurt Vonnegut.
And now he thinks he's better than me.
That is so far from the truth.
It's fine. I just have some feelings about how you read A Man Without a Country because I told you to read Kurt Vonnegut, and you picked that one. And now you're just being so, I can't believe you haven't read, you need to read this book. I can't believe you haven't read this yet. I want to talk about it, blah, 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 blah. It's just driving me crazy because that's not the point.
What? Please dive deeper. What is not the point?
I really can't dive deeper. I don't think, because I don't really know why I feel this way about it. Except that I'm gonna mention the Enneagram again. The person that whatever. I am a 4 on the Enneagram, and I don't like feeling like I'm not unique. And this being so passionate about a book is my thing, not your thing. And I feel kind of attacked by it, I think.
So you feel like by me loving a book, I'm stealing part of your personality?
I mean, it's illogical.
Part of your identity.
It's illogical, but yes. But I think
your unique gifting in life is loving books.
Yeah.
So anybody else who loves books is stealing part of your personality or part of your identity?
No, it's just you. But I think it probably has more to do with the fact that I've literally been telling you to read these things for our whole relationship. I've been trying to get you to be a reader forever. And you have become more of a reader. But there are still some things that I tell you should read this because I think you'd love it, that you don't read. And then the one time you do it, you're throwing it back in my face, and it's just I just don't know how to deal with these emotions that I'm having.
Okay, well, I only take issue with one thing you said. I don't see how I'm throwing it back in your face.
I mean, you're being me about this book.
Well,
and it makes me feel uneasy because I've been telling you for 10 years to read books. And now you're like, you need to read this book. I can't believe you. I want to talk about this book. I'm like, how many times have I said that to you? I want to talk with somebody about this book and you don't read it. You just choose not to read the book that I want to talk about. I can't really explain it. I can't really articulate it. I just have these feelings and it's bothering me.
But there's also just like a sweet irony. Like, you tell me, like, I've been telling you for this long that you should do this because I think you'd love this. Then I do it. And now you have mixed reviews about me actually loving it.
No, I think it's just because of the way... I don't have mixed reviews about you loving it. It's just like the way that you are...
enthusiastic about it?
Toward me, yeah. I told you I can't really articulate it, except that it's just, it was such a immediate opposite, I guess, and that I don't know. I can't articulate it. I'm not even saying if it's right or wrong. I don't even know what it is.
Well, you have touched me, and I'm pretty sure I have touched you.
Okay. Maybe it's just a little bit of self-righteous anger. Because I've been telling you for so long to be a reader, and then literally the one book that you read at my suggestion, you become so enthusiastic about it and sort of not critical isn't the word, but like just like you need to drop everything you're doing and read this book so that I can talk about it. You know what I mean?
Well, that definitely has not happened. I've just talked about it a lot, which may make you feel that I'm telling you that.
You did tell me that. After you finished reading it, you said, I need you to read this right now so we can talk about it.
Well, that's just enthusiasm.
I know, but what I'm saying is couple that with the 10 years of me trying to get you to read, you know what I mean? And then you just turn around and do it to me. It's like my own monster I created.
So you're upset because I gave you a taste of your own medicine.
Yeah, but mostly because, it's mostly because you've shunned my advice for the last 10 years about becoming a reader of certain books. I don't know. I can't articulate it. All I know is I'm feeling some feelings.
I've changed, okay? I've grown.
I'm not sure if I like it.
Becoming a deeper person or like a more mature, thoughtful person.
It's not about that.
Seeking out deeper materials.
It's not about that. It's not about you. I don't want you to do those things because I do. I told you I can't articulate it. I just know that it's been a little bit annoying for me.
Well, can't make sense of that.
Sometimes things don't make sense. You have to be okay with that, you know? Life lesson.
Which, speaking of that, I have, just because I don't know I don't know what context I will be able to bring this back up, is just my thoughts on why I have become a reader. So Sarah has 100% been, a bookworm since I've ever known you. And that is, shortly after fetus. So...
Literally like 2 years old.
Yeah.
I was like falling asleep reading books. That was my thing.
And ever since I have known, loved, and been with you, you have been a connoisseur of the written word. And it's been basically, it is such a big part of your identity. And you have been trying to get me to be a reader for a long time, and I resisted it for a long time because that's just not... I don't know why, actually. I don't know if it's like...
just because you're stubborn. That's really why.
Yeah, I don't...
you didn't grow up in that, like being taught that it's important, and nobody we really know reads a lot. Like there's just,
Yeah, I was never nurtured to be a reader, so into adulthood, I think maybe through my insecurity, probably, I don't know.
You were also very much a proponent of, if I'm going to read, I'm going to learn while I read. So like the nonfiction type business stuff.
Right.
That kind of argument.
This is definitely like looking back in hindsight and trying to, deconstruct the way I was acting at this time. But like whenever I graduated high school, in high school, I don't remember ever reading a book. And you're supposed to read all these classics for like English and stuff. I didn't read any of them.
I only read one in my English classes.
But I come out of school and I remember... That
tells you something about the Oklahoma education system.
Yeah, the Oklahoma education system, if you didn't know, is one of the top list in the country of the worst schools.
Yeah.
Definitely.
We're in the top 5, I think, or top 10 for sure.
Definitely in the top 10 worst schools in the country. Or you could say, in the bottom 10.
Right, yeah.
But, we're Oklahoma, we're in the top 10 of a lot of things, and we want to keep it that way,
Yeah.
We got top 10 worst schools, top 10 most obese, top 10 abusers of opioids,
number
top 10
1 in meth.
And human trafficking.
Yeah.
Top
we're
10
just
in worst road conditions.
Really doing great over there.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
anyways, that's off topic.
Top 10 state, you're just none of the top 10s you actually want to be in.
Yeah.
So anyways.
Yeah, you were not a reader.
I was not a reader, and I was actively proud, and I think probably through a mask of pride, of how much I didn't read. Like, it was kind of like...
Maybe that's the self-righteous anger I kind of feel right now.
I was like braggadocious about how much I didn't read.
Yeah.
Anyways, through the influence of my... very lovely wife, I began to read more, but not, I would say...
we started with the Harry Potter books.
Yeah, and I went from like 0 books a year to maybe like 3.
5.
Something like that. And then went on from there. But then within the last couple years, and especially this last year, I have decided to become more of a reader because I just basically came to the conclusion that I have never met or heard of a wise person who doesn't read. Every wise person I've ever studied, met, heard of, found quotes from, anything like that, there is nobody that has basically been somebody that I want to be like, and they're like, I don't read books.
Right.
It's always like, I read a book a day. I read a book a week. Look at this, I've read this massive library in my office. Like, every single wise person that I want to become like, reads extensively. And any person that I have ever, I guess I shouldn't say any, but for the most part, any person that I have come in contact with or known or whatever that actively doesn't read, doesn't live a life that I want to emulate. So that's basically kind of my thought process of why you should read is because I've never met a wise person that doesn't.
Yeah.
And I feel like we should all be striving for wisdom.
I mean, I am a big advocate for reading, so you don't have to tell me.
Yeah. And I actually heard a quote this week that was, we have more information than ever before, but less wisdom than ever before, which I very much agree with.
Yeah.
So anyways, A Man Without a Country by Kurt Vonnegut.
All that being said, he read this book that changed his life.
It definitely changed my week. I'll say that.
Yeah.
I can't speak for my life because, it's only been like 10 days since I read it. But it did, I think, I guess this is why I loved it so much. I felt heard.
Yeah. Well, that's the whole point of reading.
Is, through this existential crisis, through like voicing myself and like feeling like I am a desert of like feeling whenever I think maybe possibly I'm an oasis of feeling within a desert. Meaning that there's potential for the things that I'm feeling, seeing, and observing to be things that need to be seen, heard, and observed through the lens of an artist and brought forth into culture. And reading A Man Without a Country made me feel like that is what Kurt is and was.
Totally.
Kurt's dead, by the way.
Wow. Just sounded so sympathetic right there.
Kurt is up in heaven now. And if you know Kurt Vonnegut, you'll know that's a joke. So the book, I mean, I felt heard from the very first sentence.
Yeah.
So it's a collection.
Well, first of all, Kurt Vonnegut had a very plain way of speaking. Like he just like said things.
The way that
everything he said was so simple and so clear and so true.
Yeah. So the way that Kurt writes is matter of fact.
Yeah.
But a lot of it is matter of fact through the lens of a otherworldly creature. Like not like in a sci-fi way, like it's written from an alien perspective, but more so like it's kind of written in a matter of fact way if an alien observed from the outside what the human existence was.
Right.
And so he was like...
Yeah, so he was definitely an observer of human existence.
So instead of saying it like a normal, just the way that we would think about it because we are human and we experience these things every day, he would write it in a way that makes you think like, wow, that is weird if you observe it from like... out of body experience.
Yeah.
But anyways, the first essay is called "As a Kid, I Was the Youngest," and all of the essays are titled the first line of the essay. Creativity.
Yeah. Well, matter of fact.
Yes.
Right?
But I say I felt heard from the very first sentence because the very first sentence of the book is, "As a kid, I was the youngest member of my family." And the youngest member in any family is always a joke maker because a joke is the only way he can enter into an adult conversation.
Yeah.
And I am not the youngest in my family. I'm actually the oldest in my family, but I always strived to be at the adult table. Right. I always strived to be in the adult conversations. I was never interested in like being at the kid table, sitting with the kids. Like I always wanted to be, I guess, older. I don't know if I wanted to be older, but I definitely wanted to be a part of the older conversations. Mm-hmm. And I felt heard by that just because that's exactly how I was heard, at the Thanksgiving dinner table. It's like basically everybody's having a conversation and you aren't really a part of it because you're like 9 or whatever. But then I found that whenever I could make a joke that made the adults laugh, now I got to be a part of the adult conversation.
Right.
And so then I became a joke maker, through that of just like wanting to be a part of adult conversations.
Which is also still the way you enter into a conversation. I mean,
yeah.
If you're not speaking up too much, you just throw in a joke here and there and then the whole group laughs at you,
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't really have any more commentary other than like I felt heard from the first sentence and I really like that sentence.
As a whole, what are the essays about? Just generally, like... I know they're like a range of topics, but
yeah, I mean,
that's essays.
I don't know if I'm smart enough to actually pull out like a full on like theme, I suppose, of the book, but it definitely Kurt is a anti-war, so a lot of it has to do with a critical view of our government. And a critical view of the way that we are treating our world. So I would say it has to do with anti-war, continuing to deny climate change. And I guess it just comes down to humanism. And
I would say he's very much a critic of America.
Yeah, I mean, that's the reason it's called A Man Without a Country, because he says, like, I call myself a man without a country because how can I be basically proud of being an American whenever our school systems in America are some of the worst in the world? How can I be, like, proud of being an American, if we are destroying the planet through our addiction to fossil fuels and, like, all of this stuff?
Yeah, and he... fought in World War II and was a survivor of the Dresden bombing. So like that's where the government and anti-war conversation comes in, because he definitely like struggled with it firsthand and had PTSD, I'm assuming. Definitely like a critic of America, but not in a cynical way, I guess you would say. Like I never anytime I've read anything of Vonnegut, I've never felt like, oh my gosh, he's so cynical. Like, it's just like, I guess, matter of fact, pointing things out.
Right. And so I guess one of the why I say I felt heard is because I also feel critical towards these things.
Right.
But I have not figured out how to wrap my language around how I feel without just being divisive, or feeling like if I speak out, I am just adding to the noise of the world. But hearing Vonnegut's point of view, it's kind of like, yes, absolutely. Like, I agree so much with like what you are saying, and you're able to write it in a way that brings sarcasm, or it brings some humor into
satirical.
It brings some like satire to it, which makes it like not just this hit piece,
right?
Which I find very like inspiring.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that I agree with absolutely every single word that Kurt Vonnegut ever said, but I do just agree with a lot of his sentiments in this book.
Yeah.
And in the second essay of Do You Know What a Twerp Is? Basically what this part of the essay is about is socialism, and how basically just because a few people have taken on the word, socialism,
right,
and then went on and committed atrocities, or just terrible things, but they did it under this like flag, or whatever of like, socialism, but it actually wasn't socialism, but that's what gave the stigma or whatever. And he's talking about Stalin and shuttering churches, and the suppression of religion. And so he says, about Stalin's shuttered churches and those in China today, such suppression of religion was supposedly justified by Karl Marx's statement that religion is the opium of the people. And Marx said that back in 1844, when opium and opium derivatives were the only effective painkillers anyone could take. Marx himself had taken them. He was grateful for the temporary relief they had given him, and he was simply noticing, and surely not condemning, the fact that religion could also be comforting to those in economic or social distress. It was a casual truism, not a dictum.
Yeah. I think that, well, the first thing is that context is so important. And we just kind of forget about context anymore. Like, we see a quote and we're like, yes, that's exactly what I think. But actually, if you read the whole context of the quote, it's like the opposite of what you think it says.
Right.
I feel like, and that in particular, like with the opium, like obviously nowadays we don't view it that way. We don't view it as like a painkiller that's like a relief.
Yeah.
It's more of an addiction. And
which would allow somebody who's very critical or, rejecting of religion to, basically go around and being like, well, religion is the opium of the people, and just use that, to it's basically using a Bible verse out of context.
I mean, it's just kind of wild how one sentence can literally flip meanings. Like, it means the exact opposite of what you think it means.
Right.
It's crazy.
I mean, a prime example of that is the line from Slaughterhouse-Five that everybody quotes. Oh
yeah, the everything was beautiful and nothing hurt, which they quote as like a utopian, I guess, ideal. But really, he said that line because he had already seen his whole life play out and knew that, like, how it ended. He knew how he was going to die. So then nothing mattered anymore. He just was like, yeah, cool, whatever. I'll just like chill. It's just like not what you think it means, but you should care about. I've actually gotten into this thing probably within the last week. I've decided if I see a quote that I really like, just really love and like kind of resonate with, I have bought the book that the quote is in to read it, because I feel like context is important. So that's my new thing now.
So on to the in the third essay, a really good quote from that is, practicing an art, no matter how well or badly, is a way to make your soul grow. For heaven's sake, sing in the shower, dance on to the radio, tell stories, write a poem to a friend, even a lousy poem. Do it as well as you possibly can. You will get an enormous reward. You will have created something.
It's one of my favorite Vonnegut quotes because, well, obviously for obvious reasons. I think in the culture we live in now, there's this idea that if you're not doing something to put it out there or to like gain recognition or whatever that is, then it's not worth doing. And I'm a huge proponent of hobbies and like doing things because you want to do it. It kind of goes, there's this quote I saw online last week that kind of goes with this. It says, if anything is worth doing, it's worth doing badly. And it's the same idea. Like, just because you don't know how to play piano very well doesn't mean you shouldn't play piano. Like, if it brings you joy, then it's worth doing poorly. Just do it.
Yeah, I agree.
I think we just so underestimate doing. Like, it's kind of like, I guess, being bored. Like, we just underestimate the value that having a hobby does, or that being bored allows you. Like, there's so much creativity in just like painting something stupid that nobody's ever going to see, and that's not going to make you any money. And there's like so much value in that. And we just, in our hustle culture and our like only work matters, like once you hit, I don't know, 25 or something, it's like you're allowed to have no interest outside of whatever your work is. And that is just insane.
Yeah.
It's crazy to me.
Kurt also said that before the rise of social media, he died in like 2007, I think.
6 or 7, yeah.
And so before like this entire new era of the world was at play, where we're sharing absolutely everything. And I think it rings true even more now.
Definitely.
Than probably when he wrote it, because now we don't feel like we can ever create something without the intention of sharing it.
Well, yeah. And we feel like if we're not being validated in our creation, then our creation isn't worth it. But like, that's such a sad, sad existence to me, to like, I don't know. It just seems crazy that you would only create based on what outside people want you to create. Like, I just don't understand that at all. Like, shouldn't you listen to the truth of what's inside, you know? Yeah. We just don't do that because we're too concerned about putting it out. Like, no, focus inward. That's it.
Yeah. And if you're only creating the things that, you know, basically are going to be liked by the widest trend audience, then you're never going to change anything.
Also, choosing to not create that stuff, that bad poem that nobody will ever see, like, I think probably will keep you from getting to your masterpiece. You know what I mean? Like, because you're not fleshing out like all of these ideas, and you're not learning you're like making creative mistakes and then learning how to paint it better next time or whatever. Like, you're just kind of stalled in your creative process. And I mean, you'll never get to your masterpiece that way.
Yeah.
I think. We've had this conversation a little bit with Josh, our friend who was on the podcast last week. I said something to him about, because he's a musician, and I said, I wonder if there's like a lot of people, a lot of artists, music artists around today who will never, like, maybe the biggest rock band that we've ever known exists right now, but we'll never know it because they're too concerned with following the trend of music right now. They're making, you know, the very electronic or very hip hop or whatever. They're like following the trends instead of like making their true sound, and like, we'll never know it. I think that's a fascinating thing to consider.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's a whole that's a whole thing.
So I guess moving on. Here's just 2 great jokes that I love.
He was a funny man.
Yes, he says he when he got a degree in anthropology, and he's kind of talking about that because he like taught English, and like he also did a bunch of stuff in engineering, and he's talking about that. And then he says, it was a big mistake for me to take a degree in anthropology anyway, because I can't stand primitive people. They're so stupid. And I just think that's an amazing joke. And then here's another great joke. This was written in the Bush era, because he never even saw Obama or obviously Trump. I would love to hear what he has to say.
Oh gosh,
about that. But
probably not great things.
He was very critical of Bush and the warmongering, and this joke is I think pretty famous, but it's still funny. The last thing I ever wanted was to be alive when the three most powerful people in the whole planet would be named Bush, Dick, and Colin.
Very matter of fact.
Yes, and funny. So he goes on to start talking about fossil fuels, and I think it's just so spot on. And again, it's so true. Like up until today, like nothing has changed.
I think it's so crazy when you read things that were written so long ago. I mean, even like we can even talk about like how 1984 is very indicative of our culture today, and Handmaid's Tale, and Brave New World by Aldous Huxley, which I haven't read yet, but I hear is like very much kind of predicting our future. Or David Foster Wallace predicted the internet before the internet was a thing. Like it's kind of crazy, like reading all of this old stuff that really did come true, and then it like kind of makes you feel like you're living in like a, I don't know, dystopian novel or something.
Well, and I think the danger of that too is it leads people to think like, well, this stuff has been happening forever. Yeah. And the life goes on. Like we're still here. Right. The world continued. We're still here. And they had the same things going on 50 years ago as we do now. And I think that's a dangerous way to think. Totally.
Because just because it was happening then doesn't mean it should be happening. Like it still is wrong.
And also, with the thing with like fossil fuels and climate change and all that type of stuff, if everybody takes that view of like, well, I mean, the world's still here, it's like, well, do we care about the world? Do we care about the human race being able to continue beyond just our, meager existence in all of,
we
time?
Have proof now that the world is suffering from what we've done and what we're doing. So you don't really have the excuse of like, well, the world's still here. Well, yeah, but for how long? Like we have proof that it's going to crap,
Quote from chapter or essay 4, I'm going to tell you some news. Here's what I think the truth is. We are all addicts of fossil fuels and in a state of denial. And like so many addicts about to face cold turkey, our leaders are now committing violent crimes to get what little is left of what we are hooked on.
Putting it in terms of addiction, that's interesting.
Yeah, he talks about fossil fuels as an addiction and America's addiction with fossil fuels. I think that's the way he frames it, and
there's a lot of money in it, right?
Yeah,
that's the whole point.
I mean, all the money, and it's not even just like our politicians' addiction. Like the politicians are addicted to, and the capitalists are addicted to fossil fuels because of the money side of it, right? But all of us are addicted to it for the convenience side of it. It's like, we are addicted to driving our cars, right? And we are addicted to air conditioning and electricity and plastic packaging. Like we're all addicted to these things, and we are basically, we can be quick to blame. Like, we can be quick to blame and be like, well, I mean, the bad oil companies and the government are like being bought off by the oil companies to continue doing this stuff. Which, yes, valid, all true,
and a big problem.
Yes. But how are we changing our personal everyday habits to actually combat what the whole reason that they are making so much money is because there's all of us just spending
playing along
money on it.
We're pawns in their game.
And it's like
what Hassan Minhaj has said. But he was talking about Amazon specifically, about how it doesn't really matter who you are. Every person has some moral thing against Amazon, like whether it's like the way they treat their employees or how they do business or whatever it is. Like everyone has some sort of moral aversion to Amazon. However, whenever you ask, okay, am I going to be moral or am I going to do what's convenient? Every single one of us says, oh yeah, convenience, duh. Like that's why we still have Prime, you know? Like we still use Prime because it's convenient. And I feel like it's the same here. Like getting a car that doesn't take gas is more expensive. It's less convenient. It's a hassle to set up your life in a new way. It's like creating all new habits instead of like, you know, using the bags at the grocery store. You have to remember to bring your own, and that is hard. That I know that's like, it seems so minimal, but that's actually, it's hard to remember to get your bag. And then when you're already out, you're like, oh my gosh, I'll just get a plastic bag, or I have to go home and get my reusable bags and then go back out. I don't want to go back out of my apartment, you know, or like shopping obviously is a huge one. Like how we consume clothes is very harmful to the environment, but it's convenient. And it's just so hard to like put new habits into place, but it's also literally the place to start is like not using paper towels every day and like not just throwing away your Forever 21 shirt and go buy another Forever 21 shirt. Like there's plenty of clothes in existence already. None of us have to buy new clothes ever. Like you could thrift or secondhand shop for the rest of your life and
or
we'd be fine.
Not be a victim of materialism and feel like that you need to buy a new outfit every single party you're invited to.
Well, of course. That's kind of the point with like thrifting and secondhand shopping is like it's a completely different mindset than like, ooh, new occasion, new dress. Like that's not, you don't need it. Nobody remembers that you only wore that other dress hanging in your closet once to the last event you went to. Like nobody cares. But it really does start with you shifting your mental perspective. To be fair, it does seem overwhelming. Like the government and all of these like rich political people or whatever are doing things that are really, really harmful. And like it seems kind of hopeless. We can't really stop them kind of idea, you know? But if you do your best to, you know, fight, stick it to the man, you know, power to the people. Like it really can change things.
Yeah. I feel like maybe part of the human condition is to that we always choose present convenience over future altruism.
Yeah.
Because the sacrifice of that present convenience, we feel like that affects our life more to a heavier degree than not doing that ultimately affects the thing we're being altruistic against.
Yeah.
So like not buying that affects me more than it'll ever help the environment or whatever it is. And so we choose our current convenience over, you know, future altruism. And I think that is why it's important for government to step in the way that like let's just say New York City and California are, you know, banning single-use plastic bags. And it's like, yes, that is inconvenient, but we would never choose that inconvenience ourselves.
Right.
It is something that needs to happen, but there's no way we would get 9 million people to say, oh yeah, I will inconvenience myself, you know, because I believe that this ultimately is going to be for the betterment of, you know, animal and humankind. And it's
like I said, right now, if I forget my reusable bag, I'm like, well, that's okay. I mean, I'm already out and I don't want to go back home, you know.
What am I going to do?
If they don't have a plastic bag for me to use, then I'm either carrying it in my arms or I go home and I get my bag. Or I guess I could buy another reusable bag, but you know.
I wonder if that's... I think just, I feel like it would be almost an impossibility to change the world in those ways without some sort of governmental intervention because we would never choose to inconvenience ourselves.
Right. Well, and there's just too much for the government. Not like we're too big of a world, for the governments to not implement things.
Yeah.
I just don't. But I don't think that overwhelmingness should stop you from doing what you can.
Yeah, absolutely. Kurt Vonnegut, quote, "Don't spoil the party, but here's the truth. We have squandered our planet's resources, including air and water, as though there were no tomorrow. So now there isn't going to be one."
Yeah, that's it.
And, Kurt had a very cynical view of the future. And humanity and whether humanity ultimately can be good.
I can't say I disagree, though.
Yeah. The next essay is I've been called a Luddite, and a Luddite is basically somebody who rejects new technology. So it's like every old geezer who's like, my flip phone's just fine. My rotary dial, got me through the Great Depression. I'm sticking with that. It's basically like it's almost a fear of like the future technology.
Yeah.
But to Kurt's credit, he came up as an adult and he lived his lifetime from whenever technologies progressed in a way that actually were detrimental to, well, not that our current technologies aren't detrimental to, some things, but specifically, let me just go ahead and quote him. "Today we have contraptions like nuclear submarines armed with Poseidon missiles that have H-bombs in their warheads. Right. And we have contraptions like computers that cheat you out of becoming." Bill Gates says, "Wait till you see what your computer can become, but it's you who should be doing the becoming, not the damn fool computer."
Okay, first of all, I really love that idea. I don't think that computers are, the ultimate evil by any means. However, I do think, well, if you just think about like how much we rely on our phone, how much we rely on Google, to, like we're curious, which it does have its like pros and cons, right? Because I do think like being curious about something and then like looking it up and reading the whole Wikipedia page about it or something, like you learn something from that. But I do think it lets us kind of opt out of a certain exploration of ourselves. Like I think we kind of like just settle for the answer that the internet gives us instead of like really just pondering things and like coming to your own conclusions. I think we do miss out on that sort of becoming.
Yeah. It's like when I mentioned this last week, but it's like whenever we do research, that means Googling the question we have, reading one of the top, 4 results, and specifically the one that already confirms our biases.
Exactly, yeah. We do sort of, I think, let the computer do the thinking for us, which, like I said, there are pros to it, but there are definitely some cons that I think we don't even remember our cons anymore, Yeah,
and I think, to Kurt's point, it's like technology, whenever I say the word technology, we immediately think of smartphone.
Right.
Like that, like we just think about...
Because that's the time we live
in. We just think about those technologies, but like nuclear warheads are technology. Technology that...
Atomic bombs.
Like all of those, like all of these things that are like world enders. Like are technologies that our human race has... developed, created, stockpiled, and...
with the intent of harm.
Right. Under
quote unquote defense.
Right. Under the guise of protection.
Right.
But it's like there's a difference between having like defense is would be like anti-warhead. I don't even know what the anti-missile, like I don't remember exactly what those are called, but essentially tracking systems that can see when a missile's coming. It goes and it shoots the bomb down. Like that's a defensive mechanism.
Right.
Anyways, we don't have to get into all war talk, but I would say, if anything, I would definitely be a pacifist because I believe that Jesus, the person, regardless if you believe in his divinity. I do believe in his truisms and human, like, and it just the way that he lived his human life and the words and the life that he lived and the things that we can look at to practice. I believe, and well, I don't know if it's a belief. It's more so if you look at the life of Jesus, he would be a pacifist. There's no way he would actively engage into war as flippantly as we do.
Yeah.
And
it comes with we talked about this whenever we went to the Sea, Air, and Space Museum here to see the submarine, and the video they show beforehand that like tells you all about it. Like literally the words that they use are like blah 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 to defeat the enemy, you know? And I just like felt so like uncomfortable with like what innocents who are fighting because the higher ups told them to are the enemy. Like same as like in Kurt Vonnegut's Slaughterhouse-Five, like the whole point is that like the wars were fought by the babies. They're fought by the 20-year-old men, the 18-year-old men, not the higher up government officials who claimed the war, you know? Yeah. Like it's this whole idea of like pinning people against people and like, but why, you know? And I think you hear all of those war stories too about like, you know, just scared 18-year-old German kids who ran into scared 18-year-old American kids, and they just like looked at each other and they have like a human connection, and then each run their own separate way because generally speaking, most of the common people don't have problems with the other common people. Like it's just such a different, we just forget about that.
Yeah.
In the, like, I don't know. I just don't like, I guess, war terms.
Yeah.
The enemy. Like, who's the enemy though? Like, just because they're on the opposite side means they're the enemy, but are they really? Like, which that gets into like a whole bunch of conversations, but because then you have to ask like, okay, well, am I the enemy? Or, you know what I mean? Like, right. And obviously there are, I mean, I'm not saying that like we shouldn't have gone to war for World War II or whatever. Like, I mean, obviously Hitler needed to be stopped. He was a terrible, terrible man. But like, I just think that, as I've said, I think probably lots of times, you should ask yourself every single question and like from every single angle. And that's the only way to really, truly know what your opinion is. And so,
I mean, I think that Kurt asked those questions, like specifically within like Slaughterhouse-Five and the Dresden bombing. And he, like, he believes, like he thinks, or I mean, anyways, Kurt Vonnegut would say that Dresden was a atrocity.
Yes.
Like the, from his perspective and at the data that was given to him at that time, there were like 120,000 people who were murdered
by us and our allies.
Yeah, like by the US and the UK within like 24 to 48 hours.
Yeah.
Which is more people than died in Hiroshima. And there was one other one. Like nuclear bombs were dropped and killed less people than what were killed in Dresden. But he goes on to like basically take on the voice of maybe a critic and say, or not even a critic, more so like somebody who was a part of the war and saying like, if we didn't do that, think about how, like if we didn't stop Hitler, then how many more people would Hitler go on to kill? And it's like, okay, yeah,
like
that's
the
it.
lesser of two evils.
That's like an interesting like way to think about it. Like if we didn't, like what was our moral obligation? You know, it's like, was it to do this and let it keep happening, which could have led to even more death, or was it, you know, doing it in like whatever? And so I think essentially because ultimately humanity is so screwed up, there is no right or wrong because there just is.
I agree. But that's what I'm saying. Like, that's why I ask every single question and like feel fine with asking every single question. Like it doesn't, I think sometimes people get uncomfortable whenever I like say certain questions out loud. They're like, how can you ask that? Like, or like, because I think it like makes them question their own certainties and their own beliefs, you know? And I feel like you should question your own certainties and beliefs. Like, because how can you know that they're your belief if you don't examine it from every angle?
Right.
That's kind of how I feel.
I mean, I think that's where the problem with where we are in our world, and especially in the church. Like,
yeah,
nobody's really allowed to just freely ask questions anymore.
Right.
Because of our outrage culture and our call out culture
and our fear of answers.
Yeah.
But like, I just don't understand why you wouldn't want to know like, even if it's an answer that you don't want, isn't it better to know? Like, isn't it better to be like, okay, now I know the truth and I can move on? Like,
well, you would think that, but I mean, the human condition leads us to have a fear of going to get a doctor checkup, because if we know, then we know. We have a fear of logging into our bank account, because if we don't look at it, then we don't have money.
To admit that.
But if we actually log in and look at it and we see how much is in there, now we have the knowledge and we have a basically responsibility to do something about it. And so it's like,
I guess that's true. I just find it wild that you would settle, you know, like but I also like asking questions. So maybe I'm the odd one out here. Who knows?
So thinking about like the nuclear bombs and, you know, the American stockpile of bombs, and like our lustfulness to go to war and murder people.
Yeah.
And there are obviously very critical people on the other side that hate that I even just said that, and very much hated Kurt Vonnegut for having a platform and saying it. And I just really loved this letter that he has. This whole one of his essays is actually just letters that people sent to him and his responses. And this person wrote to Kurt and said, "If you knew that a man posed danger to you, may be that he held a gun in his pocket and you felt he would not hesitate one moment to use it on you, what would you do? We know Iraq poses a threat to us, to the rest of the world. Why do you sit here and pretend like we are protected? That is exactly what happened with Al-Qaeda in 9/11. And with Iraq, though, the threat is on a much larger scale. Should we sit back and be little children and sit in fear and just wait?" And Kurt says, I wrote back, "Please, for the sake of all of us, get a shotgun, preferably a 12-gauge double barrel, and right there in your own neighborhood, blow off the heads of people, cops accepted, who may be armed."
He's so sarcastic.
And it's like, he's so sarcastic, but also that raises like a really important question of like,
yeah, it's true.
We think these people are armed and they may use it against us. Well, does that mean it gives you a right to blow the head off of some guy who like, may be armed and may use it against you?
Yeah. What is your belief that they have weapons? How does that justify you attacking them? Like, it's kind of like what I said to you a couple of days. I don't even remember what we were talking about, but I said, yeah, well, I mean, their actions don't justify yours, and vice versa. You know, like, just because they do you think that they might do something, that doesn't actually justify what you're doing. Like, you still have a responsibility. We still have a responsibility as the human race to like do right. You know, just because you think someone might do wrong doesn't mean you get to do wrong and, you know, feel good about yourself for it. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's interesting. The whole preemptive evil.
Yeah.
You know?
It's like you're so scared of somebody else causing evil
that you're just going to do it first.
Yeah.
And feel good about yourself because you prevented them from doing it.
Right. And since you're on the surviving end, you feel that you did it good.
Yeah.
But then that also goes like to like moral questions of, you know, if you were given the choice and you could push an innocent man off a building, knowing that it would save 50,000 people. Right. Like, would you do it?
Right.
And it's like, well, you would save 50,000, but you would be making...
You'd make the decision that one person's life isn't worth it.
Right.
Yeah.
And, it's like, I don't know.
I mean, obviously, I hope I'm never in that situation, but
yeah. And then it's also like, there's the whole, there's a train going down the track and it's heading for a group of like 10 people, and you can pull the lever,
right?
And you can switch it to only kill 2 people or whatever.
It's like what Captain America said in The Last Avengers. We don't trade lives to Vision.
Yeah.
But then the whole thing, Vision was like, yeah, but if you kill me, then everyone else survives. Mm-hmm. But I think it's an impossible choice to make.
Which may be the impossible choice that Jon Snow is going to have to make against the White Walkers.
Game of Thrones is killing me. I'm so nervous. I said the other day, I was like, okay, there are 3 outcomes that I will hate. And there aren't that many outcomes that we can have. So I feel like no matter what, I'm going to be so sad about whatever happens.
Yeah, we're recording this after the 2nd episode come out.
Yeah.
And the 3rd episode is, I guess, probably going to be the Great Battle. And we are definitely going to lose some people we don't want to lose. And
I'm just so nervous.
Okay, but getting back to Kurt Vonnegut.
Yes, let's not get too down.
Yeah, but we've been talking for a while now, and I haven't even got to like one of my favorite.
Okay, well, let's do your favorite
pieces of the book, and that is whenever he starts talking about humanism and humanists. Mm-hmm. And I think
maybe I'm a humanist, by the way.
And his thoughts on religion and Jesus, and like he's not a Christian.
Yeah.
He's a humanist. But just these thoughts are so poignant and so true still, and so in line with what I feel that like this is part of the book that I was just like amen in the back of just like I was amen in the back saying amen.
Say it louder for the people in the back.
And so I'm going to read through like multiple quotes here that kind of all do with the same thing.
Okay.
So my parents and grandparents were humanists. That's what used to be called free thinkers. So as a humanist, I am honoring my ancestors, which the Bible says is a good thing to do. We humanists serve as best we can the only abstraction with which we have any real familiarity, which is our community. So serving the community is the best thing you can do. And then he says, how do humanists feel about Jesus? I say of Jesus, as all humanists do, if what he said is good, and so much of it absolutely is beautiful, what does it matter if he was God or not? But if Christ hadn't delivered the Sermon on the Mount, which is its message of mercy and pity, I wouldn't want to go on being a human being. I'd just as soon be a rattlesnake.
Mm-hmm. The thing I find interesting is that I've noticed about myself the last, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 years, and I don't know really what it means, is that I tend to very much believe, or not believe, but to very much relate to people who don't believe in God or Christianity or whatever you want to say. Like, I relate to them a lot more than I do people who, do belong, which I find, I don't know what that means, but like Kurt, everything he says about religion and Jesus and whatever, I'm like, oh yeah, totally, I believe that. Like, absolutely, I believe that. Like, it kind of threw me for a loop in like 2016, because I was seeing, like, with the political climate and the election and everything, all of these, Christians, these people that I supposedly share a circle with, right? Saying all these things that were literally the exact opposite of anything I would ever like believe or say out loud or think or whatever. And then literally the opposite side of that, all of these humanists, these atheists, these people who don't believe in God saying these things that I was I wholeheartedly believe in, you know? And I just find it really fascinating. I don't know what that means as as far as like, is the church just in a really bad spot right now? Or am I in a bad spot? Or whatever. But I just think it's fascinating that these people who, and I also think that part of it is that because they aren't a part of the church, like as a whole, that there's a very beautiful point of view from them that we should pay attention to.
Yeah.
If you call yourself a Christian, you should listen to what people outside of your bubble are saying.
Yeah.
And none of it, they don't. I mean, we're not really like concerned with
right.
outside opinions or whatever you want to say, commentary. But like, I think it's really important. And I guess maybe because I feel a little of an outsider within the like church.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's because the American church has mostly sold itself to, a political party and,
but it's
aligned
not even
itself
just,
with nationalism.
It's not even just politics, though. Because I think like there's a lot of underlying messages that the church teaches that I think are wrong, and like that I personally has taught me like negative things and that I like can't get out of. Like I just think there's a lot of, and I'm not saying that there's a lot of things wrong with everything. Like it's not, and nothing is ever going to be perfect. But I just think maybe I agree so much with like a bunch of these like non-believers or atheists because I feel like an outsider within the circle, and like they're just pointing out the things that I see, and I think it confused me at first, and now I just think like it's something really important that like we need to talk about,
Yeah. And I think this is probably my favorite quote of the whole thing. And it gets back to, Kurt talking about the Sermon on the Mount, which is, he says, how about Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, the Beatitudes? Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God, and so on. Not exactly planks in the Republican platform. Not exactly George W. Bush, Dick Cheney, or Donald Rumsfeld stuff. But for some reason, the most vocal Christians among us never mention the Beatitudes. But often with tears in their eyes, they demand that the 10 Commandments be posted in public buildings. And of course, that's Moses, not Jesus. I haven't heard one of them demand that the Sermon on the Mount, the Beatitudes, be posted anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Blessed are the merciful in a courtroom. Blessed are the peacemakers in the Pentagon. Give me a break.
Yeah, I think it's so true. And I think that it takes... it's just so unfortunate that everybody refuses to listen to anybody else,
mm-hmm.
Because I just think like, I mean, even within the church bubble, like nobody will listen to anybody else, and like you have somebody who I think had very sound opinions and obviously was well versed and like knew his Bible and like knew the stuff, like they're not ignorant, and like they're pointing something out that I think is really important, and we're just like, well, you should believe in Jesus, or God, whatever. I don't know. I just feel so kind of confused with like the church at whole.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think some of that has to do with church, but I think a lot of that has to do with nationalists that claim the name of Christianity.
Well, I agree, but at the same time, like I have very like personal connections that I see the exact same thing, and it has nothing to do with politics and everything to do with... Well,
it does have to do with politics because politics inform your social decisions.
And I agree,
if you're like religion, if you're the church that you worship in, if that church aligns itself with with a political affiliation, which then determines how you view and treat people.
I know. I'm not saying that it's not political in that sense. I'm saying that it's okay. Now I'm confused at what I'm saying. I think what I'm saying is that politics aside, right? Politics aside, I know plenty of people who are good people in the church who are going about Christianity or faith or whatever you want to say wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because of the way we teach church. I know that there is a political agenda or whatever you want to say, but that aside, the way we do church is wrong, I think. And the way that we engage in church is wrong. And it's not like, I don't think it's what was intended.
Definitely.
And
not.
I think like there's a reason that I just find it so confusing that I look at atheists and humanists, people outside of Christianity for my, or that I see them saying things. I'm like, oh yeah, yes, that to me is what like Jesus is. That to me is what faith is.
Right.
Nobody in the church really. I mean, there are a few that I admire within the Christian faith, that I think had it right or have it right. But most of the time it's people outside who don't claim any of that I think have it right.
Yeah. It's sad that a atheist lead singer of a rock band can point out the truths of Jesus more effectively than a pastor of a megachurch.
Yeah, and I think that the atheist rock band guy is correct. Like that, nothing. I don't think he's wrong in any of his thinking. And
yeah, I mean, I think the same thing about Kurt Vonnegut.
Exactly.
In that statement that I just read about Jesus's like Sermon on the Mount, his most like famous like prose of like speaking of what he wants for the world.
Right.
Is like completely forgotten, essentially,
right.
in place of a legalistic view of Moses before Jesus was, came and took over grace.
Right.
Is like, why do we like hold our fists in the air and like got to keep the 10 Commandments
and maybe
versus like being merciful.
Right. And maybe
graceful.
It is something to do with politics, but I think that's the thing I'm trying to say, that like the church teaches these lessons aside from politics. They teach these lessons, whether overtly or not, that I think are just like incorrect. All they do is teach you how to like, not express your true feelings because like you're not supposed to, and it's like you're not supposed to want these things that every human being naturally wants. But the reason we all want them is because if you believe the Christian faith, like God created you that way. He created you to want connection, and he created you to want like this. There's this like actual like thing that is not satisfied within you, and he created you to want to satisfy that. And one of our pastors a couple weeks ago, he said God doesn't judge you for like trying to satisfy that hole, fill that need. Like he doesn't judge you for that because he created you that way. All you have to do is learn how to like navigate it and whatever. But like I think that's true. Like I and all the church does is kind of like try to like put out the candle. You know what I mean? They try to like cover it up and like not really like teach you how to be a human being. Like I think the church doesn't know how to like accept humanity. I think is what I'm saying. Yeah, like humanity is full of doubt. Humanity is broken. Humanity is beautiful, but it's broken, and like we don't know how to accept the broken. And so instead, we just say like, well, you're not supposed to want that. you know? And all it does is create a lot of shame, I think.
Yeah.
Within people. And so then we all end up like walking around as these like hypocrites. That's what happens.
Yeah.
In my personal opinion. And I just think it's wild that I connect more with humanists and atheists than I do, whatever you want to label yourself as, than I do with the people who I supposedly belong to.
Right.
You know? That's insane to me. And that's a general statement. Obviously, it's not everybody, but...
Yeah. I mean, if it was everybody,
right.
Like, we know lots of people
right.
that are, you know, living out, trying, I guess, we ourselves, I would say, and those who we are connected with and strive to be connected with are people who are striving to become more like Jesus every day, not trying to become more like an American Christian every day.
Exactly.
I'm trying to become less like an American Christian every day and question everything that the American church has ever taught me, because so much of it is like not it's not biblically based, and even if it is biblically based, it's not biblically based on the words of Jesus. It's
or it's been
distorted, you know, out of context for what it actually is. And not based on the pillar of the faith, which is, you know, Jesus and like God becoming fully human, living the human existence, showing us the basically the richness of human life.
Yeah.
Taking on our faults and our sins and our, you know, transgressions, dying for it for us, and then leaving us as he's resurrected with a message of grace and understanding, and that we can go about our lives not having to worry about the legalistic, you know, thing of Moses in the Ten Commandments, and making sure that we follow absolutely every single rule, regulation, and political affiliation in order to, you know, enter into, the kingdom of God, in order to have like, you know, whatever. It's like, if we actually focus on Jesus and who Jesus is, the American church shouldn't look hardly anything like what it looks like, and our lives as we are part of the Christian faith should look very different than what they do if we're actually following the Sermon on the Mount of blessed are the meek, blessed are the merciful, blessed are the peacemakers. Those are all things that are not on our top priority list, you know, in America.
Like, yeah, when you look at the church at large, the church as a whole, like it's just not, it's not a representation of that.
No,
I don't think. And I mean, I always question, because I do think I tend to like be kind of critical or cynical about the church, but I don't think that it shows that. And I would assume most people believe that, like agree. And I think that that's a shame.
And I think to even, we can bring Game of Thrones back into here, in Tyrion's words, that you don't have to make peace with your, you only have to make peace with your enemies.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like, blessed are the peacemakers. And they're like, oh, I'm peaceful. It's like, okay, are you still peaceful when you're talking about refugees or Muslims or anybody of a different faith for that matter, or anybody of a different color or socioeconomic class, or
orientation?
Like, sexual orientation, or, you know, in gender preference, like all of these different things. Like, are you being a peacemaker about in all of those categories, and not just being a peacemaker within your factions of the church?
Right. Well, the answer is no.
Like, if you are truly following Jesus' words, and I guess I should say, if I am truly following like Jesus' words, and I'm trying to be meek and merciful and a peacemaker, then my decisions do not align with anything that our American political system say on either the left or the right.
Yeah.
Because like we talked about in Faith and Politics podcast, it's like Jesus isn't a Democrat or a Republican. Like, Jesus has no political affiliation, and that's the whole point.
Yeah, I think it's just absolutely insane saying how backwards things go. I think maybe this goes back to what we were saying earlier. Like, the context of everything is key. And we as in the church, I think, has taken so many things out of context. And and I know, I don't know, maybe I've taken things out of context. Who knows? But I feel so strongly and have felt so strongly since I was 12,
Mm-hmm.
that that there's something in the church that is just not right. It's just not correct. And I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how to fix it. I don't even know, can't even really articulate what it is, but.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I also recognize in the same way that you just said that there's no way I have it all right.
Yeah, but again, that's humanity, right? That's the brokenness of we use humanity as especially on the internet and memes and stuff, oh, humanity's so good. When you see somebody feed a dog or whatever, it's oh, humanity. But humanity is actually the broken pieces of us. Humanity is the things that hurt your heart, but you have compassion because it's humanity, And I feel if you just tap into that, and if you just lead with that, then you'll know Jesus.
Yeah.
I think.
Again, with what you're saying, whenever I find myself searching for the teachings of Jesus, I find myself going down a different path than whenever I am searching the teachings of the Western church.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm just focused on the teachings and the values, I guess, of Western religion, I don't find myself walking down the same path that I do as whenever I just focus on the teachings of Jesus, quote unquote, our Savior, that I fully believe. I as a Christian, and it's Easter was yesterday. It's I fully believe in the death and resurrection of this fully man, fully God entity, whatever, Christ. And so within that, I need to be more focused on that fully man, fully God's teaching than following a religious tradition that I don't feel aligns anymore, or generally aligns with that message of meekness, peacefulness, mercifulness.
I think it's just really confusing. And I think it's hard to know what to be a part of.
Yeah.
Not even just in religion, but just in life. It's hard to know what to do.
Yeah.
Everything is so, literally everything in the world is so crazy right now.
Yeah. I do want to throw a disclaimer in there and say that there are church Christian leaders and churches that are pursuing the correct things.
It's I said, that's a general statement, but I know, I know people who are genuinely following Jesus and creating a space and a place for people to come to that's true and not whatever else everything else is.
Right. I've been a part of, I am a part of, and I am, mentored by, all the people who I feel are
but again,
pursuing for generalities, pursuing the right path.
Right. But again, I think regardless of anything and everything, you should ask yourself every question from every angle.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you don't know what you believe.
Absolutely.
I think.
Yeah. I agree, and I am questioning all of those things. And the answers that I come out with have not really been, oh, yeah, that's what we do now.
Yeah.
It's oh, huh, interesting.
What should I change?
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah.
So that is one of the main reasons why I love A Man Without a Country so much, because Kurt points out very eloquently and very plainly some of the problems and hypocrisies that I see with the Western church's alignment with republicanism and nationalism.
And also just criticizing, I think, some of the things that America does.
Yeah.
We're so entitled and whatever in America. We just think we're the best. And I just think it's important to read opinions on how maybe we're not. You know, you shouldn't be so arrogant that you think you don't need to change something.
Yeah.
And then like do your best that you can do to change it.
I'm just looking at my highlights here to see if there's anything to end on. And there is one to end on, but I also just really think this is funny. He's talking about he has two uncles, one that he really liked, one that didn't. One uncle that was basically a toxic masculinity man. And he says, when I got home from the Second World War, my Uncle Dan clapped me on the back and he said, "You're a man now." So I killed him. Not really, but I certainly felt like doing it. And he goes on to tell another story, the story of the uncle he did like. And I don't remember it exactly, and I don't have it highlighted to read it, but paraphrased, essentially, they were just doing something normal. Him and his uncle were hanging out, like sitting under a tree, just like basically just counting the leaves. And his uncle turned to him and said, "If this isn't nice, I don't know what is." And Kurt has taken that as a mantra for life, and he encourages all of us to take that as a mantra for life. And just whenever we are sitting in these moments, and if we never truly just point out the things that are nice, then we fall into basically cynicism and just thinking that all of humanity is for naught. But if we just focus in on our own life when we're sitting under a tree next to somebody we love, and we just recognize that if this isn't nice, I don't know what is.
Yeah, just next time you're drinking that cup of tea.
If this Starbucks isn't nice, I don't know what
I wasn't
is.
meaning Starbucks, but okay.
Well, I think that is a good spot to end on. Again, if you guys want to check out our Patreon page and join the Jensen AV Club, you can do that by going to jensenav.club. That link is also in the show notes and in the description. There's a bunch of different tiers that you could be a part of to help us continue to create this art, and like we like to say, to continue to create art that matters instead of art that sells. Thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.